Hey, I'm Ida from Ignition Off-Road, and today we're going to install a aluminium Mishimoto radiator into my XT Forester. So if you watched my last video, remember that I discovered a leak in the factory radiator. So what I've done is I've purchased myself a Mishimoto aluminium radiator, which should solve the problem. Now this Mishimoto radiator is a twin core, so it's wider than the factory, which allows for more effective cooling. Not only that, it's a full aluminium radiator, so the end caps, unlike on the standard factory one, which are plastic, this is all aluminium and welded, so there's a lot less chance this thing's going to leak like the old one, which is going to be really good when I'm out in remote places. Don't have to worry about this thing busting. So anyway, let's jump straight into the install. First thing we're going to do is to drain the coolant out of the old system. To drain the coolant, I first need to gain access to the engine bay, so the skid plate comes off and it's time to pop the bonnet. As I'll be sticking my hands near the radiator fans, it's a good idea to disconnect the battery and remove the radiator cap, as this will allow the coolant to drain quicker. If you've never drained a radiator before, on the Forester there is a drain plug on the lower right corner. Unscrew this and get ready to catch as much fluid as you can. While the radiator is draining, I'm going to remove my APHN shroud and start disconnecting the top hoses. Once the top hoses are disconnected, there will be two plugs for the radiator fans to disconnect, and the bottom hose from the thermostat. That bottom hose will retain fluid, so be prepared to catch any fluid as you disconnect the hose. With everything disconnected, the radiator should now be free to remove. Finally, I removed the fan assembly from the radiator shroud, and we can now compare the old and new radiator side by side. So the first thing you will notice, other than how shiny the new one is the difference in thickness. Now the Mishimoto radiator is a twin core unit, so essentially has two radiator cores in the unit, hence why it's so much thicker. This will allow both more coolant capacity and improve its cooling efficiency. The other big difference is the OEM radiator has plastic end caps, whereas the Mishimoto unit has welded aluminium ones. Looking at my old radiator, we can see that the radiator has failed at the end caps on both the top right corner and possibly the lower right corner as well. However, that could just be the radiator coolant dripping down. Last thing to note with the Mishimoto radiator is that it has a cap on the radiator, whereas the OEM one didn't. This is just a universal feature, so it can fit various models. In my case, I won't use this feature, so I'll have to use the provided plug and fit it to the cap. Next, re-secure the fan assembly to the radiator. I found the factory bolts didn't fit, so I had to get some of my own, as I didn't find any supplied with the radiator kit. With the radiator assembled, it can now be fit back into position, and all the hoses and fan wires reconnected. Time to see if the APHN shroud fits. Unfortunately, one of the corners did not fit, but luckily it's an easy fix, and with a little clearancing work, it now fits a charm. I've reached out to APHN about this, and they are planning to modify their next batch of shrouds to make them a little bit more universal for different types of radiators. Last thing to do is to bleed the system, and of course, fill the radiator with coolant. To bleed the system, turn on your car and crank that heater. As the engine heats up, this will allow the thermostat to open quicker, allowing the coolant to flow through the radiator and push out any air bubbles. Top up the system as needed. As you can see here, I've made an absolute mess and I really need to get myself a funnel to do this job better. Last thing I wanted to touch on is I wanted to install a cylinder 4 coolant mod at the same time, which is a great modification to improve the reliability, particularly on the EJ turbo engines. But in my case, I simply just could not remove the cap to the 4th cylinder. So this time I've given the mod a miss until I get some better tools. So the Mishimoto radiator is now installed and I'm really stoked about it. Looks great in there and I'm really happy I made that APHN shroud fit the unit. Now the last thing I really want to do to the Forester before I hit the tracks is get that dual range transmission put into the Forester. My local trails are the Victorian high country and they have a lot of steep terrain, so that low range is an absolute must and there's no way that standard 5-speed manual is going to do the job. In this video you might have also noticed this shirt I'm wearing. This shirt is actually my very first piece of merch. It's a funny saying I've come across and it basically says, I'm not lost, I'm just geographically embarrassed. I figured specifically as the Subaru community is quite an adventurous outdoor community, there's a good chance a lot of us have been lost along the way. So I thought why not, it's a funny little shirt, so you can get yours now at teespring.com. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Thanks for checking out this video, make sure to check out my FanBeach account and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.